Hello. Let's talk about how to memorize your multiplication tables. So we're going to talk about memorizing your multiplication tables. Now, one thing with this, if you start looking at the multiplication tables, I think a lot of people get intimidated because we've got a lot of things here. But if you start to look at it, we've got, in this case, because I've got the zero column here, this is 169 squares to fill in. That's a lot. But if you start to look at it, zeros, anything times zero is, of course, zero, which makes this column and this row very, very easy. Next, of course, the other easy ones we have are one's row and one's column, and anything times one is itself. Okay, that one's fairly simple. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4. So everything times itself is itself. Everything times one is itself. Now, let's look at some of our other fairly straightforward, some of our other relatively easy numbers to memorize. And 10 is another really good one because with tens, 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times 2 would be 20. And notice I'm just tacking a 0 onto the end of those numbers. So 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. So, okay, that's some more. That's some more simple ones. Another nice one to help remember is our 11s. And 11 times any one-digit number, of course, is just that number repeated. So 11 times 1 is 11. 11 times 2 is 22. I've got 33, 44, and so on. It only changes once we get to that 11 and 12. And there's a special trick with those that we can go over later to help. Actually, there's an easy trick for remembering your 11s or actually multiplying any number by 11. 88, 99. For now, we'll just go ahead and fill in that's 121. And that's going to be, and this one is going to be 132. Now fill in that column. Then let's take a look at things like our twos. Twos, it's fairly easy to just count by 2. And I hope twos are pretty easy to memorize. So 2, of course, we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. And these, this is where we're starting to, it's beyond a very simple pattern. But with that, we've already cut down the size of things that we really need to memorize that are difficult to memorize down to a fairly manageable portion. And then we're going to show you how to manage that a little bit more. Another fairly straightforward one is our 5s. With 5s, it's fairly simple to count by 5s, 5, 10. And of course, that ones digit always alternates between 5 and 0. So 5, 10, 3 would be 15. Notice that anytime I've got an odd, it ends in a 5. Anytime I've got an even, it ends in a 0. 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Another thing to notice is that if with those even things times 5, it's just half of that even number plus the 0. So 8 times 5 is 40. 10 times 5, half of 10 is 5. So we've got 50. Half of 12 is 6, so that will be 60. So we've cut down the number of things that we need to, that are kind of difficult to memorize, down to a fairly reasonable number. 3. But let's show you some other things. Oh, hey, then there's also this thing with nines. With nines, there is a trick. Think about this. If you have your hands up, if I were just to count the number, say I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 2 fingers up here and 7 fingers up here, 2, 7. So 3 times 9 is 27. It's always going to be 1 less than this here. So the sum of these digits is always going to be 9. So that'll be 36. 3 plus 6 is 9. 6 times 9? Well, 5 plus 4 is 9. So we've got 54. 63. 72. 81. 9 plus 9 is also adds up to, 9 plus 9 actually adds up to a multiple of 9. And of course, that would be 108. So this brings us down even further on the things that we need to memorize. Next, we've got things like our perfect squares. These are the things that are along this diagonal, a thing times itself. Now, I hope you guys have memorized, I hope that it's kind of a useful thing to be able to do, to memorize these numbers that are a thing times itself. So 3 times 3 is 9, and so on. But before we go on there, take a look at how few of things we have at this point to memorize. We've got things like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and sort of 6 by 6 things to memorize now. So we've got 36 things left to memorize. That's a lot smaller than this 169 block of numbers to memorize. So let's talk about memorizing things like 3s, 4s. And one of the tricks for doing this, it's just going to be repetition. So when you're memorizing, say, a number, I would say a thing to do is to write and repeat. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to count by that number. Now, when you do that, it'll go slow the first few times, but as you go forward, it's going to get a little bit easier and a little bit easier. So let's start with, say, those 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, and 36. So when we're when we're doing that, just count by that number. We can do the same thing with say our fours. So when you do this, it's going to be just a matter of repeating. And do this like every day. Do this a couple times a day. And in a lot of ways, I think the important part is actually to say it. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36. Once you have gone through this, it's going to be slow, but you'll start to pick up speed. It'll start to come a little bit easier. Same thing happens with your fours. So if I'm doing my fours, of course, that first one we start with is 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, and 48. So these are the things that can really help you memorize. It's just write these out and repeat them. And that's one of the ways to memorize some of those few things that are a little bit harder to memorize on a multiplication table. So with that, you're going to be able to fill in some of those last things like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36. Just repeating it again. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36. With our fours, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, 48. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, 48. Same thing can go with our sixes. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, 60, 66, and 72. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. So in a lot of ways, the hardest ones for a lot of folks here are the 6s, 7s, and 8s. And again, with these, you're just going to repeat them until they get to be a little bit easier. 42, 48, 54, 60, 66, 72. Now, I had mentioned before that this kind of diagonal is a very useful, that's a thing times itself is called a square, and those perfect squares are usually relatively easy to remember. So that also helps us cut down those numbers of things. So 7 times 7 is 49. 8 times 8 is 64. 9 times 9 is 81. 10 times 10 is 100. 11 times 11 is 121. 12 times 12 is 144. And now we're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. And again, when you're memorizing, write it and say it. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 54, 50, 56, 63, 70, 77, and 84. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 70, 77, and 84. Now we only have eights. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, and 96. Hopefully this will have helped you work out a strategy on how to memorize your multiplication tables.